Hello YouTubers, this is the noobifier. Every once in a while I like to make very long videos about important subjects. They're usually well received, and it's definitely not a waste of anyone's time, so here we go. This week, the org that I'm a member of met as usual, and during our weekly org meeting, the conversation went much broader than normal, and we started to talk about our concerns for the future of starcitizen. The org is made up mostly of original backers who track the development in more detail than average. We have a wide range of backer, from those with a basic starter pack all the way to Legatus++. We all want the same thing, which is why we back, follow, and play. We want the dream that was pitched, but we will gladly accept a little bit left or right of the original plan, as long as it becomes the best damn space sim in the universe. I'm going to summarize some of the things that we discussed, and the reason that I'm making this video is to try to put into words what some of us are thinking. My hope here is that you're going to hear what we have to say, and then also post your thoughts in the comments. This type of video works better if you share with your orgmates and friends. It took some time to piece together, and we begin with the Kickstarter, which is when we first saw the start of our World War II simulator set in space. It's early days and we had no idea what the end state would be. It's clear now that the developers probably also had a cloudy idea on this end state, basically developing and designing on the fly. It looked and sounded great, and this was a simpler time before the marketing machine ramped up with stretch goals. Week after week, the project sounded better and better as more people theory-crafted about the possible future. I'm going to jump forward and talk a bit about IFCS because this is why I actually became a backer. IFCS is Independent Flight Control Systems, which is a 6-degree freedom, Newtonian simulation created by John Pritchett. Center of gravity and mass would be calculated based on the weight of all parts. The parts that made up the ship existed independently, meaning that they would be able to take damage independently. Not only would the missing part result in a change of center of gravity, altering the flight, but the parts and systems would react realistically to damage. With the first release of Arena Commander, these systems were simply and quietly added patch to patch. Patch notes weren't really a thing back then, so from the player's perspective, these improvements behaved like Easter eggs and needed to be discovered. Glossing over all the milestones, the one thing you need to remember is it wasn't faked, it was simulated, and that's a big deal. You needed to manage your boost fuel, your rate and attitude to ensure that the weapons came to bear first. It was so skill-based that it became enjoyable and rewarding. After playing for some time at a friend's house, I bought into the project, eager to practice and learn. It was clear that my time invested wouldn't only be fun, but it would also lead me to be a better pilot and have a higher starting skill level. I could see myself being a dogfighter in game, running escort, offering protection, or engaging head-to-head to settle a score. It was the classic chaos of dogfighting in space, but somehow I found it calming and methodical. These are the mechanics that we had after the second patch of Arena Commander. They were polished, and around patch 1.3, they worked perfectly. I remembered that if a player was acquiring missile lock on me, I knew exactly how long to wait before popping chaff and thus breaking the lock. I knew that if I moved a little bit further away or reduced my system output, my resulting signature would make me fall off that player's scanner. The combat was quick. The ships felt quick, and I could time that chaff to give me the time that I needed to get behind an asteroid. The asteroid was protection because at that time, you needed to see something to lock it in starcitizen. You needed to see something to have a pip and a firing solution. By reducing my power output and keeping that asteroid between myself and my foe, I gained a big advantage. It wasn't cheating because it was an intended part of the simulation. This cat and mouse type of gameplay was well ahead of its time, and I fear that it's gone forever from starcitizen. For several patches, I purposely ran without missiles. IFCS was so good that it was able to translate that change of mass into a slightly better flight characteristic. The lower mass allowed me to close the radius a little bit tighter and sooner, giving me better rate and a better position over my enemy. This is about the time that dual stick became more popular, and when space combat became knife fighting. The 6 degree of freedom Newtonian model, coupled with an independent control over all 6 degrees of freedom, meant that you had options. You could neutralize the circle strafe before it even started by rolling and pulling back, keeping weapons on the enemy, and controlling your distance. You see, at this time we still had sufficient lateral thrust that most of these negative behaviors weren't really a thing. When racing was added, it further pushed player skill level and bolstered competitive gameplay. You got so used to the drift, the blackout limit, and fuel recovery that it became second nature. This skill translated directly into dogfighting, so we actually had a reason to be good at both. Some players like WTFosaurus had enough flight time in racing that he was able to post great lap times and actually read chat at the same time. It was always humbling and humiliating to be paired up with one of these pilots in a race, because they showed you just how much you needed to learn. It was never a waste of my time because once again, we knew that this was our flight model and that they were going to build a universe upon it. At the time, I had never considered that they would actually break it so badly in the future. AC wasn't perfect, but it was really good. When it worked well, you felt like a god in your ship, and when it didn't, you got punished, and then you got good. After CIG adjusted the weapons and hardpoint document, running fixed weapons gave you a slight advantage in DPS over gimbaled. That made sense as gimbaled might have more time on target, but needed to hit you more to kill you. The PIP or Predicted Impact Point indicator made an assessment of where to aim. It never gave you the perfect solution because it never accounted for what the enemy would do between when you shot and when it hit. We had a visual attitude indicator as part of our HUD element that showed us where the ship was pointing, and we also had a leader line from the ship to the PIP which showed us their changing velocity. The pilot needed to make these micro adjustments to their aim and could do so based on the information that we got from the HUD elements. If the target sped up or changed direction, you would need to lead the lead PIP. More trigger time and practice made this aim point second nature. Weapons had better range and were relatively accurate, allowing for long-range hits with some reliability. Firing off into space would heat up your guns, but you could fire a couple shots at very long range to tag the target if you knew where to aim. You basically looked at your distance and knew exactly when to start firing. Skill was preserved up to this point despite a rocky year. Just before patch 2.5, Chris Roberts announced that he wanted to move combat closer because the assets were beautiful and detailed. He wanted World War II in space. He wanted that cinematic experience where you got behind someone and blew them up just like in an old movie. To achieve this, he said that he wanted to reduce thruster output, neuter weapon accuracy, and then tinker with the top speed. He said that he wanted to address jousting, and what we got is generally seen as the start of the end. What was worse was that we lost so much progress and that the changes didn't actually fix the issues that they were supposed to. 2.6 nerfed the accuracy even more by further reducing the range that the projectile would travel, plus some other changes. 3.0 felt busted, and I noticed that most of the great positional dogfighting was actually ruined. I felt at that time that the one thing that CIG had achieved that was working fine was thrown out. Please understand that I'm aware of other fantastic improvements in directions such as planets, living cities, mining, rentals, and the start of Law and Bounty. For flight in general though, planets added atmosphere, gravity, and gravlev. These were never part of the original plan. I feel as if someone started pulling on the threads to try to fix what seemed wrong at the time, and I feel like our once beautiful sweater has been reduced to not much more than a ball of yarn again. Most alarming to the group of friends discussing at the weekly meeting, we're currently just over 1 year away from the proposed release of Squadron 42. The majority of the org consider combat in 3.7 to be a broken shell of what we had. You can still get from point A to point B, but all of what I remember that worked so well isn't there anymore. 7 years into development, and people seem to still be pulling on strings looking for a solution. ESP was meant to bridge the perceived gap between gimbaled mouse pilots and fixed joystick pilots. It worked very well, and I can say that because I never noticed it working, exactly as John mentioned in his design document. ESP has been a nightmare since patch 3.0, stabbing unwanted course corrections or fighting the pilot who it's supposed to be helping. We were told and reassured that all of these changes were being made to make the game more balanced and fair. Was auto-gimbal actually added to fix the busted ESP, or was it added to level the skill plane? Did we actually need a level skill plane, or did we just need a reason for people to learn the systems that we had? Skillful players have now adopted this new auto-gimbal meta. Adding auto-gimbals has forced everyone to use them, and new players die even faster than before. Don't worry, I'm about to make my point. The result of my conversation with the org was that we're pushing 7 years of development. For year 3, 4, and 5, we were polishing the flight model that was the core of our game. We had a healthy dogfighting community, and we had a skillful racing community. It seems as though the devs hadn't really decided by that time what they wanted Star Citizen to look like. I say that knowing that there must be a plan somewhere, and it's very easy to pass judgment as an outsider. So I come near the end without an answer. I lust after the flight that we had in the past, and I understand for some reason or another that I'm wasting my time hoping that it could be reversed. The ex-competitive pilots of Star Citizen each have a special number that they remember. Mine is 1.3. Boost in 1.3 could make your ship fly like a plane for very short periods. You could weave around floating garbage and use it as cover. 1.3, in my opinion, was masterful. 1.4 buffed the TTK, dropped some stats, and we got some increased jousting. The PU was added, our lateral thrust was nerfed, and then we got more circle strafing. Cruise was added so that we could cover larger areas. It forced even more circle strafing and jousting. Unified velocity meant that anyone with a dual stick could pull back and roll, ensuring that their weapons remained on target. I would rarely end up jousting a player with dual sticks, yet the developers insisted that the sweater needed to have more strings pulled. Later we lost G and boost limits, increased top speeds, and even shorter ranges on all the weapons. 3.5 increased the speed, added heat, added fuel limits, boosted the shields, and finally ruined combat. With a huge TTK and inaccurate weapons, it could take between 5 to 10 minutes of flat circle strafing to get an actual kill. Combat seemed stationary, and players exhausted after 10 minutes of engagement would simply break off combat in the future. It wasn't fun, and combat wasn't worth it. So what do I miss? I miss the ability to dart and weave through debris and stabilize my motion changing directions with boost. Don't confuse the knife fights of 1.3 with the jousting and circle fighting. One is good and skillful, and one is just trading aim shots until whoever has the better DPS and accuracy gets the kill. We need long-range projectiles again. Fighters need to boost like 1.3. Rotation can be stronger, but balanced by blackout, heat, damage, misfires, and limited boost fuel. Anything over SCM should turn your ship into a rock in space. You should need to return to SCM to turn, which would keep the fighting close. I certainly don't have all the answers, and I also don't want the responsibility of taking all the feedback from the entire community and trying to satisfy the masses. I do feel that the broader vocal audience may have muddied the water. What I do know is that we've lost a major component of the game that was near perfect in many people's eyes. We needed to achieve position over our opponent, it was skillful, hard to learn, and that's okay. We watched the core of our game become better and better, and then it was pulled out from under us. It's okay for adults to want what was pitched, the last of a dying breed of game that needs a monster's PC to play. Easy to play, but thick and difficult to master. I'm a PC game and I'm a space sim. It's important to remember what was said in the past when moving forward towards the future. It was very hard for me to watch such a solid foundation for the rest of the game devolve into what we have now. The backers had started it all, based on the promises of the best damn space sim, and we're still waiting and hoping. That's all I have for you today, but as I said, the real value is interaction and discussion in the comments section below. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. This video took a lot of collaboration and effort. Please share with your friends and org mates. Fly safe, and I'll see you in the verse.